All right. We are live. Live. Let's see if this is connected. Yeah. Perfect. All right. We are live. We just got off a workshop on Zoom. If you were on the Zoom workshop, say hi in the chat. Let us know what you learned. We were talking about board setup and board tuning, which is super critical. How you set up your board is incredibly important. If your board is not set up correctly, you can't ride well. So board setup, board tuning is one of the most important parts of a windsurf athlete's career. That's working with shapers, it's working with fin designers, and it's doing all the testing. Hey, Sammy, Jorg, Steen. If you're on the workshop, Zoom workshop, say hi. And how was it? That was really interesting. Hey, Thomas, Dennis, Steen. I've never done a workshop like that before. I want to branch out, try some different kinds of teaching. Edwin, so we just came off Zoom. We were on Zoom for about 45-50 minutes looking at boards and board setup. It went really quick. I wanted to have a little bit more interaction with everyone. It was my first time with Zoom as a platform for coaching, but it was great to have that back and forth and to see your faces and see your setups. So we'll definitely do something like that again. Hey, Chris, Caro, Thomas, Matt, Mika, Owen, John. And so, yeah, that Zoom is, I think, really interesting. We can have a bit more back and forth feedback, and I think there's a lot that you guys can learn from each other. Again, that was my first time doing something like that on Zoom. And so there was definitely a learning curve there. It went a lot faster than I thought it was going to go. And I wanted to have, it was great to have the interaction that we did have, but I wanted to have even more interaction. I wanted to do some breakout groups, but then suddenly 45-50 minutes had passed and I had to get upstairs to get ready for this live stream. Mario, Bjorn, yeah, really great to see you guys. Owen, what are you struggling with the foot strap screws? Just because they're tight, or is there some other issue? One thing with foot strap screws that you want to be careful with is you really don't want to strip the heads. So sometimes if you're using a screwdriver that's a little bit too small and doesn't fit snugly in the head of the screw, and there's just a little bit too much wiggle room, you can start to bend the metal, distort the metal from the screw head, and start to strip it. This can also happen if you're using a hand drill. And that's obviously not good, because then you can't get the screws tight enough, or worst case, you can't get them out again. Often it's stripping it in a certain direction so you can still go back, but you want to be careful with the screw heads, and you do want to make sure that those screws get deep in the board, because if the screws are not all the way in the board, you've got some metal that's sticking up that will bend. I've got a collection of bent screws. I'll bring some or post some in the group to show you how easily those screws bend if they're not all the way in. Even if they feel like they're all the way in, they can still bend. So you really want to get those screws down deep in the board. Yeah, Steen, I really wanted to do the breakout rooms because I think it's really cool for you guys to share with each other. It was amazing how quickly that time went by. I was thinking, like, when I planned it, I was like, yeah, if we start an hour before the live stream and I need about 10 minutes to get set up on the live stream, 45 or 15 minutes. So that should be enough time. And I was even thinking, I don't even know if I have enough to talk about. But that workshop just went like that. It felt like it started and then it was over. So really interesting to learn that new format for me of interacting. But we'll do more of these. I think it's really cool to have that interaction between all of you, because there's, in the learning process, you've got what I'm saying, and that's great, but you actually can learn so much from each other. And so having those connections, I think, is really, really useful. Yeah, Edwin, great tip. Proper Phillips. I'll post my Phillips. It's a little rusted now, but like it's a Phillips number 3 is what most of these board screws are. At least the Cobra boards. It's a Phillips number 3. And so I've got just like not a ratchet one, because the ratchets, I mean, there are good ratchet screwdrivers, but I find with the ratchet one, sometimes it's hard to get the right amount of force, or they break or whatever. And so I've just got a big Phillips number 3. I mean, it's like the biggest one that they sell in this, and you can really get a lot of is that torque on there. Just a big Phillips number 3. And I've got slot boxes in my board, so all of my screws from the vent plug to the foot straps to the fins are all Phillips number 3. But if you have US boxes or a different kind of vent plug, then you're going to need additional screwdrivers as well. But I think the Phillips number 3 is really important, because it's those foot strap screws that are the most difficult. The fin screws, you don't need to get them wicked tight, or just getting them in will be fine. Owen, sounds like you know what to do. That sounds good. What kind of board, what kind of screws are you dealing with? Is it a Cobra board? Is it a production board, or is it something else? So for everyone that's just joining us, we just came off of a Zoom workshop. If you signed up, basically the way it worked, I think next time we do it, maybe I'll do it a little bit different as I'm learning how to do Zoom. And interesting. Yeah, it's a Witchcraft custom. So it's a different kind of screw maybe than the standard Cobra screws, which is not bad at all, but it just means it's maybe a little bit different than what I'm saying. Maybe it's not a Phillips number 3. It could be something different. But I'm sure you'll figure it out. What was I saying? I just lost my train of thought. Jeff is asking what to put on the screws to make them easier to take out of the board. I don't know. That's a good question. Does anyone have any tips for how to do that? I don't know. I just kind of crank them in and then try to crank them out. Hey, Luis. Hey, Dom. Yeah, cool. I hope that was helpful. York's got a good question. How do you get out a broken screw? That's a really good question. So if you break off the head of a screw, that can be a real pain. If there's a little bit sticking out, sometimes you can grab it with pliers. Otherwise, what I've done before, and there's different ways that you can do this. What I've done before, if there's still is a little bit there, just really carefully with a Dremel, so that's like a spinning disc, make just a cut in the top of the screw, just enough that I can get a small flathead screwdriver in there, and just work the screw just a little bit out, and then grab it with pliers. Or you can also drill into the screw and take it out. And I think there are tools for that. I think it's like with a thread that goes the other way, so that then when you can turn that new piece that you drill into it out and take out the screw. It's definitely annoying when that happens, but it's possible to fix. Yeah, Caro just mentioned that. Dan did the Dremel work. Left thread cutter, John says. Yeah, these guys know how to do it. That's exactly the technique. And yeah, it's not fun, but you can do it. It's not the end of the world. It's not like that. That hole is gone for good. Greg, good to see you. Yeah, that workshop went so fast. Just last thing about the workshop before we get into the coaching. Matt says easy out. I don't have experience with these things. So this is another example where having that interaction between you guys is so cool. I'm learning something. Like I've never tried something like easy out. You know, I just struggle with it. Wear out my hands on the screwdriver. Or for example, I'm not sailing with boots very much. You know, even in the winter, I try not to sail with boots. I had a day in March on the Baltic Sea, or maybe it was in April, without boots, because I'm just not used to them. And so, you know, there are specifics about riding with boots, setting up your foot straps for boots, and you know, you guys are the experts on that, more so than I am. You know, I have my limited experience, but you guys have so much more. So anyway, that's one of the reasons I love the Facebook community for that reason, but also Zoom as a format, some of these other formats. I'm still going to keep doing the YouTube. You know what, Dom? I should have recorded it. That would have been great to record it, and I could have posted it, but I didn't. I'm so new to these different things, and you know, I was up late last night trying to figure out how to get a second camera going on Zoom. I don't know if you guys maybe are using these things for work and have more experience than I have. I'd love some tips. Like I've got like a GoPro. I've got this Panasonic that I've been filming with the windsurfing with, and all of them can connect to Wi-Fi, connect to the computer, but I couldn't get them to also connect with Zoom. So then I ended up doing it with my phone in the camera app, screen sharing to Zoom to show what I'm doing on the boards, which wasn't a perfect fix, but at least it kind of worked. Anyway, enough about Zoom. I want to do more workshops like that in the future. Yeah, Bjorn, I need an assistant. Are you applying for the job? Doesn't pay, but you get access to all the windsurfing advice that you want. All right. Greg says he had nice offshore float and ride at Gwythian. Cool. That sounds like fun. Those are great conditions for training. Those are great conditions for getting better. I've been sailing a lot on Maui. It's been really windy, and I've been posting some clips. So Stina, good to see you. Hi. Nice. You've been sailing. Sounds fun. Did you have any footage? Or photos? More aerials? Those pictures you posted last time were great. I've been sailing. Maui's been windy. We've had actually a lot of wind, like way more wind than normal. Normally I'm on like a 5.0, 5.2 here. I've been on like 4.5, 4.7 every day, which is really not normal. And I've been trying to get some footage, and I've been posting some of it, just so you guys can see. This is maybe interesting, this clip. I'm these days, other thing I've been working on is trying to set up my board, and this board, there are aspects of it that I really love. Like it's super fast in the bottom turn, and I have a lot of control. I really like how it bottom turns, but sometimes it feels too stiff on the cutback, and so I've been playing with the fins, playing with the mast track, moving the mast track around, and I still don't have it totally dialed in. So when I do, I'll let you guys know what works. This is a different board. This is one that's a little bit bigger, and something that I'm working on here, I'm very conscious of, which might be interesting in the coaching, is I was really focusing this day, and especially on this turn, I remember this turn, on completing my cutback, staying in the cutback longer than what I would normally feel like doing. So already by about this point, I feel kind of done with the cutback, and so I could finish here and then go on to my next turn. But what I was focusing on is really staying low, keeping some bend in the knees, and continuing that turn even farther. And so that was something that I was working on this day. It's a really continuing that turn. Not that this is an amazing cutback, but it just shows you one of the things that I'm working on, which maybe helps you guys. I think continuing your cutback is something that everyone can work on. It's a great exercise to do, because often you get to this point and it feels like you're done, and you can do actually so much more turn. And the reason you don't do that is you don't want to miss the rest of the wave, but actually it really doesn't take that much more time to just complete the turn a little bit more. Here's an example of what I don't really like with this board. So I really like how bottom turns, but then coming off the top, see, it starts to go flat instead of staying on the rail. And so that's something that I'm trying to adjust with my setup. Chris, good to see you. And so there's like a lot of projection, which I really like, and a lot of speed, but then it wants to go flat rather than staying on the rail. So I'm trying to play with the setup to get more rail engagement. And this is a custom board, but it'll be similar for other boards. As you can see, I'm able to get so much projection. Like I really like that about this board, but then but yeah, then I have difficulty with it staying on the rail. The decurve 2022 is not a new shape. It's the same as the 2021. This section scared me. This was the moment. Hey, Dan. This is the moment I was the most scared sailing since I've been back, I think, coming into this lip. So this is something that I picked up from Bernd Roediger. I think he does really well, where he goes from like a cutback, and again, this is not like super complete, but instead of really dropping down too far in front of the wave and doing a full bottom turn, just jamming the board along the face of the wave to hit these aerial sections. Because if I were to come down to the bottom of the wave, I wouldn't actually have enough time to make it to this section. So I've got to just come straight out of the turn, stay on the face of the wave, and drive it. And you can even do this in onshore conditions. Drive it into the lip. But then this lip started throwing a lot more than it normally does at Hokipa. I'm not sure if you can see that really through this screen. Hey, Pier Francesco. But this was a much more of a barely section than what Hokipa normally does, and that caught me off guard. And so about this point, I was kind of scared, because you've got to get that high five, right? And the more the wave is curling, it's harder to get in that position to get the high five, because you've almost got to get upside down to get in that curl to get the projection. Because if you don't get the projection, it means the lip is just going to slam you down. But it's really important in this moment not to freeze up, not to hesitate, because if you do, then you will also crash. And so it's, even though I was scared, it was really about, okay, just trying to really just focusing on getting that high five. And as when you get that high five, then you get the projection, right? So you can see, like, I'm super weird positioned kind of under this barreling lip, but I get that board. So it's that high five is happening on the bottom of the board. The lip connects with the flat bottom of the board, and then that power transfers and it throws me in front to safety. And you can see how much power is in that lip when it explodes off the reef. Look at that explosion of spray. Anyway, I go through just a little bit more of my footage because maybe it's interesting. Again, this wave. Okay, so if that last wave was inspired by Bernd Roediger, this one is inspired by who's this inspired by? This is Mick Fanning. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Mick Fanning, so the surfer, the pro surfer. I feel like he has a lot of waves that are somewhat like this, where he's a lot more over the board rather than having the board out from him. So his body is more vertical on the cutbacks rather than horizontal with the board out. And then really working on speed and flow connecting with the wave. So I think I got like 4 turns on this wave. And so I'm really just thinking of it sort of like almost like skiing, where I'm sort of bumping between sections, really trying to get the timing. And I'm really on top of the board. So if you watch footage of McFanning, you can see that he's doing something a little bit similar. What I don't like when I look at this, when I coach myself, is I relax a bit too early. So I come up and I hit this, and then at this moment I relax my body, and you can see that my sail kind of does something funny, and I'm just too relaxed. I should have stayed tense a little bit longer in that one. This one I like more. This is more what I like, though. Yeah. And again, so I'm more upright. It's less with the board sort of out from me horizontally, which again is something that's sort of inspired by Mick Fanning. All right, we got a question from Thomas. Do you feel a very big difference between your asymmetric board and exactly the same custom but symmetrical? Yes and no. I think the differences with the asymmetric are subtle, but I definitely feel them. The biggest point that I feel it is in the transition from the bottom turn to the cutback. It rolls onto the cutback a lot easier than the symmetrical board. But I also really like the symmetrical boards, even the production board. I'm using the Decurve 88 in so many different conditions in Europe. I mean, that's what I'm using everywhere, because it's not practical to have an asymmetric board in Europe because the wind can come from anywhere, right? Left, right, onshore, whatever. And I really like that board as well. So it's a small advantage, but it's something we can do at Hokiba because the conditions at Hokiba are pretty much always the same. But yeah, at Hokiba, I feel that difference. So here's a few waves from yesterday. Again, it was super windy. I was on a 4.5. I'm heavy, so I'm not normally on such small sails. And I like that wave here. I don't know if it's interesting. We can also stop looking at my stuff, get into the other content, but there's a few things that are maybe interesting in terms of what I'm looking at when I'm coaching myself. So Chris is asking, what do you adjust on your board to prevent it from going flat at the cutback? Front fin position further forward. So to prevent the board from going flat in the cutback, so kind of like it's doing here, right? So this is another example where instead of hooking in the curl of the wave and staying flat, or staying on the rail, the board is really wanting to go flat here, right? And it's kind of cool, this off the lip, but it's not what I want to be doing. I want to do more of a hook in the wave. And so there are a few different things you can try. Moving the mast track back helps. That gives you more pressure on the fins. It makes it easier to get that tail rail engaged. Putting the front fin from the cutback side farther forward can help. And then the last thing that I'm going to do on this board is I'm going to sand down the rail a little bit. So right now it's got these really hard edges on the rail, and I'm just going to do very delicately just sand that edge off a little bit, which I think will help the rails to stay engaged in the water rather than, that hard edge wanting to get the board back flat and projecting. And it's a really subtle, it would be a really subtle sand. I'll go through it maybe just once or twice on the rail just to take off that really hard edge. Every millimeter makes such a difference in your boards. But the first thing I would do is I'd move the mast track back. The second thing I would do is I'd move the front fin a centimeter farther forward. And then there's probably other things I would do before I get to sanding. Like I would move the foot straps farther back, because if your foot straps are too far forward and your weight and your pressure is too far forward on the board, that will also cause it to go flat on the cutback. But I know that my foot straps are in a position that I like here. I've tried it in different places. This is where I want to be riding on the board. And I can get rail engagement. I just want a little bit more. So I'm going to try just sanding it a little bit. But before you get to sanding, try all those other things. here's an example of a one-handed cutback. So you can see I've just dropped my backhand off. You know, let it graze the water a bit. These feel really good. This is one of the exercises. So from my from the masterclass that we did in Denmark, we were working on a set of exercises. These are the ones that I sent. And these are just different things that you can work on. Philip, I don't know if you're in the chat, Philip was working on the cutbacks with the backhand off, and they're deceptively hard. And they really are good to do because they force you to be focusing on your board and using your board rather than the sail to turn. Because as you can see, when your hand is off as you go into the cutback, you can't really use your sail at all. So you have to use your body, you have to use the board, you have to use the rails. And that really teaches you a lot. And they look kind of cool. It's something you can throw into your repertoire. It's kind of a weird aerial. I don't know if I like that, but I don't really like the landing. Let's see. So here you can see how quickly the board goes flat again. And so again, I want to stay on my rail just a little bit longer. There's a 360. So this is kind of, yeah, just a classic 360. So for everyone that's working on 360s, you can see a lot of the principles of the 360 here. That front hand close to the hips, leaning into the circle of the turn, really wide grip, and really pointing with that backhand, keeping the clue open, and really keeping the clue open through the whole rotation. You can see I'll really start to sheet in here once the rotation is pretty much done. I see we've got a question. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's really anything more interesting with my footage. Trying to get at high fives. You know, it's all the same principles that we're always talking about. There's another example of it going kind of flat. Oh, the other thing, Chris, the other thing you can do, so this is actually really important, just to answer Chris's question about keeping the rail engaged in the cutback, is going with softer fins. So stiff fins will want to slide. So having the soft fins on that cutback side, so for example, like the Ezzy K4 fins, really help to keep the rail engaged. And so getting soft fins, the K4 Ezzy fins, the asymmetric, also really help to keep the rail engaged. You want to make sure that you have soft ones. So there's a few different versions. There's stiff ones and soft ones. And the softer the fin is, the easier it is to keep that rail engaged and the board doesn't want to go flat. That makes a huge difference. Like I've tested that a lot with identical fins, just one is a little bit stiffer. And the stiffer fin wants to go flat on the board more than the soft fin. Pier Francesco, Ezzy Taka, Ezzy Wave, Zeta will be the same for 2022. No changes. All right, let's get into the coaching. So we've covered already a lot of different topics, but let's get into it. So I'm just going to refresh this page and then just go through the topics like we always do. If you've got questions, again, ask them in the chat. So we did this Zoom workshop, which is great. We've got some measurements from the people that were in the workshop, which is really cool. I wanted us to do these measurements in the breakout rooms, but we ran out of time. And so we're doing that here, which is also cool because then more people can be involved. All right. Chris has a post. Let me turn up the volume. This is a goose screw from Tyree. Something is banging in front of the camera. All right. So Chris's question about this goose screw is, does he need to pull in order to complete the rotation? And actually, Chris, what I think you want to do is lean more into the circle of the turn. So if you think of the circle of the turn, if you can see my mouse is something kind of like this, right? Instead of leaning outside the turn, you really want to be leaning into the turn and extend even more. You don't want to pull in too much. Pulling in will sort of stop you. So see, when you're leaning and kind of pulling against the sail, then you fall back and it stops you. So actually you want to be pushing out more with your clue and really leaning the other way. So instead of leaning to this side, lean to this side. And that will help you get more projection, more room for the rotation. So those are the next steps. Get some more video. This is really great. Proud of you. This is great. Great move to work on. I think this is perfect for where you are right now, and I want to see more of them. I think just work on those two things: keeping the sail a little bit more open, and then leaning more into the turn. Max says, "Has my sailing changed since being heavier, kit or style?" Not really. I mean, I've gained weight a little bit gradually. I mean, I had the biggest increase in weight after I injured myself like a year and a half ago, and I jumped up about 5 kilos or so from what I was before, which is partly just from the training. I've got more weight in the muscles of my butt and legs, and maybe I've gained a little bit of weight otherwise. Worked in the dad bod, but basically the biggest change is my floater boards are now more my main board. So I used to always be on an 82, and 88 was like my floater, and then I had like a 90 something for the really light days. But on an 88 I can pretty much sail on super light wind. And what changed is now the 82 I need more wind to ride. So I find that I'm on the 88 pretty much all the time. But what's kind of interesting is the lighter days, the 88 still seems to work, which I think has to do more with the outline than the volume. Also, I have two boards with the exact same outline, but one is thinner than the other one. So one is an 84 and one is an 88. They feel very similar in the water. So outline is more important than volume, I would say. But anyway, basically, just to answer your question, yeah. So then I started my floatery board became my main board for everything. So Oga's asked, any idea to prevent windward side fin on a tri-fin from cavitating? So cavitating is when there's air around the fin, it's spitting out, it's not producing lift. You've got turbulence on the fin. That's that spin out. So you just have the one fin spinning out, or is it when you're sailing straight, or do you mean when you're turning? Let me know, and then I'll be able to give you a better answer. All right. Mika had a session in Caro. Looks beautiful. I'm going to be in Caro in November. So if you're in France or around France and you want to meet up, maybe we can do a meetup at some point in France. I'll be there for the PWA World Cup. I'll be competing, and it is in Caro from November 12th to 21st. Of course, I'm super busy while I'm competing, but we're not going to have wind every day. And so if you're around one of these days during that competition window, maybe we can do a coaching group meetup. So let me know if you're going to be around Caro during that World Cup period. Okay, moving on. Okay, so Ogo, did you say that you're having a problem with the fin sliding out while you're sailing straight? And it's interesting, it's just the one fin. It's not the whole set of fins. It's just the one fin that you're dealing with. I wonder if you could try going with bigger fins, or it might be an issue with the way you're standing. You might want to try standing a little bit more upright and using your hook to really sink down on the boom to put more pressure on the mast track, like down through the boom through the mast to the board, which will help the board set more direct. Those would be my first answers. This is actually a little bit of a difficult one because it's hard to know without seeing you sail and without seeing the setup. So if you have any footage of you sailing with this issue, that post in the group and that'll be useful. Or you might want to increase the gap between the front fin and the back fin. Sometimes, if those fins are overlapping or they're too close to each other, that can create an issue. So you can increase that gap on the windward side. But it might also be a stance thing. Like I was saying, try to stand up a little bit more or put in bigger fins. It might be that you're overpowering the fins. You might want to you could try moving your mast track farther forward or also farther back. I mean, it depends. It depends on the kind of spin out that you're dealing with. So I would try both of those. Move your mast track, 1.5 centimeters farther forward, see how it feels. Move it 1.5 centimeters farther back and see how it feels. See if that fixes the problem. I would do probably the mast track first because that's an easy change, and then try with the moving the cluster a little bit farther forward if neither of those mast track changes fixes it. And then in general, with all of that stuff, also when you're sailing straight, try to make sure that you've got a lot of load being transferred through your harness, through the boom to the mast. And so you're not so heavy then on your feet. Charlie, how's it going? All right, so if you can't get on the water, but you still want to improve your windsurfing, one of the best ways to do that is by watching windsurfing videos. And it's amazing how much you can get better just by watching other people windsurf. And this is true of videos that are edited, which is great because you have then a lot of action really compressed down. But you can also just go down to the beach and watch as well and start to see what the better riders are doing, where they're riding, what they're doing, all of that. But videos, I think, like we said, this is when there's no wind, right? So videos are a great way to do that, and you can still improve. I see some people in the group with a lot of ability and a lot of also ability to learn, but lacking a little bit in their knowledge of what's possible windsurfing, and watching these videos is really helpful for that, and it can break you out of these sort of railroad track habits of how you're riding a wave or how you're jumping. And so it's a great source of inspiration, and just the more that you're watching these videos and really internalizing the movements, then the more you can have fun and adapt and try new things when you're on the water. So these are some great videos. So Ragnar is saying he was surprised how heavy his equipment is. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's a lot of weight. I don't know. I haven't measured my gear, how heavy it is. It's a good question. All right, Bard is asking about action cams. I'm on bigger action cams. I've got the Insta360, and then I just got a GoPro 10 that I've been trying to film with some different things. The 360 is good for some stuff, and I think this is good for other things. I tried filming with the mouth mount to get some footage for you all for the group, and that was difficult. I don't know if there's any of those clips actually that are salvageable. You see a lot of like my arms and my hands. Tavi asked, do you always bring all your gear when going for a quick one-day trip? I don't always, but often when I don't bring something, that's what I end up needing. Like if I think, oh, it's not going to be so windy, I'm just going to bring 454750 or whatever it is, or 5055. then I end up needing a 4.2 or a 4.0 or something. So I try to bring most of my stuff, but if I can leave a sail, I normally do. So, you know, sometimes I won't travel with a 3.7, but then there are times where, like this last summer, where I went up to Denmark and I really needed a 3.7. You know, if I know the forecast is going to be crazy, then I'll make sure I'll throw everything in the car. Or sometimes I don't bring the big stuff. Like I didn't bring my 5.5 when I went up to Denmark the very last time. I was sailing with John, who's maybe in the stream. And we had this crazy windy day. I was on the 3.7 and I brought my 3.7, but I didn't bring the 5.5 because we had this crazy forecast. But then the next morning was great conditions for 5.5 and I didn't bring it. So I borrowed John's, luckily. He had the same Ezzy Wave 5.5. But I think it's good to bring all your gear when you can. Bjorn has a question. After recovering from swimmer's ear, ouch, I've managed to get in 2 decent wave sessions this month. This video is from Friday. Everything felt great. It was an amazing session. I was on my 75 liter and 4.0 sail. It was windy for sure. Quad fins, which felt nice and grippy. Sideshore conditions. Looking back at the footage, a couple things came to mind. How do you control the power of the wind better that hits you at the peak of the top turn? Seems in such high wind conditions, if you move your hands too close together, the whole sail might get blown away. Is this correct thinking? Or would it be that if you put your hands close together, you're able to lean your butt back more down the wave? Related comment, my hands are not moving much at all, relates to being overpowered. And then third question is, lay down bottom turn, something to be done here to kill this speed. All right, so let's watch the video and then I'm going to answer the questions. One thing I like that we see in the video is some nice flow between the turns. And yeah, it looks like fun conditions. The footage looks, you know, I know you're saying you're overpowered, but from this angle, it does look like you've got a lot of control. It looks like you're getting your turns and your timing in the wave. You know, that looked like a nice little aerial hit. Yeah, looks dynamic, looks powerful. So Bjorn, looks like you're having quite a good session despite being overpowered. I'm going to start answering the questions while we finish watching this clip. So about the hands, the more you move your hands, the more control you have. So the wider your hands are going into the bottom turn, the more control you have. This is especially important when you're overpowered. One of the general heuristics is that when you're overpowered, especially when you're really overpowered, you want to exaggerate movements because the tendency is to be tight and stuck upright. So you really have to exaggerate movements when you're overpowered like that. And that wide grip in your bottom turn gives you so much control and actually makes the sail feel less powered and like pulling you less because you can sheet it in more. Because the sail is pulling you the most when it's like half sheeted in, right? So when it's fully sheeted in, it's actually not pulling you that much. But so having that really wide grip on the bottom turn is good. You know, you're instinctively letting go of your backhand on the cutback. That's also a good technique to do when you're super powered. Now, to answer your question about moving the hands together, actually moving the hands together again when you come to the cutback makes it easier to do the cutback, and then you have less pull in the sail. So the wider your hands are when you come to the cutback, the more pull there is in the sail. Sometimes when it's onshore and the sail is really powered, you do want to keep that wide grip to keep the control going. But generally in these kind of down the line conditions, you really want to exaggerate those motions. So have that really wide grip on the bottom turn and then coming again. And this is something that you can just focus on, that one thing in your section, just that really wide grip, and then bring the hands together and then exaggerate bringing the sail across your body. That makes a big difference. So if you're just coming up to the lip and leaving the sail in front of you, it's being loaded with wind. But when you bring the sail across your body You get that S that we talk about with your arm. That depowers the sail and makes it easier for you to come into your cutback. So getting that movement of your sail, of the sail across your body as you're coming up to the cutback really helps in these conditions. So the two biggest things are wide grip in the bottom turn, and then in the cutback, bring your hands together, and most importantly, bring that sail across your body before you come into the cutback. Let me see if you can see that in any of my, so like I was quite powered these days, and so you can see here, so I'm not crazy about this off the lip. I don't like how flat it goes. Here, let me make this a little bit smaller, then it's easier to see. But you can see some of what I'm talking about here. So I've got a wide grip. I don't know if you can really see that, but then look, my hands come way together, and then really bringing that sail across the body. There's a lot I don't like about this, but you can see those sail dynamics, which will help you a lot. So really actively bringing this sail across your body, getting that S in your arm, and that gives you so much control. Here's kind of a different kind of turn, so I don't do it as much. But you can see sort of a little bit the same thing. Again, the hands come together, the sail comes across the body before the cutback. So you see that motion? It's this motion. And that really helps to reduce the power in the sail and set you up for your cutback. Does that make sense? Across your body, meaning if you're sailing with wind from the right, then it's to the right. So it's, what I mean is like coming from the bottom turn, and then I'm coming up the wave, and then I move the sail across my body, like in the direction of, like to the right of this. And so it's kind of like I'm winding up for the cutback a little bit, right? So it's kind of like I'm a spring winding up for the cutback. This is my setup for the cutback. But also when you're moving the sail across like this, it's also depowering it and setting it up in a position where it's not pulling you down the line. Does that make sense? Can you see that? So you can see I'm kind of doing that in all of these. Really bringing that sail across. Yeah, to the right. So I've got to think of a better way to say that, how to express that movement. That kind of S with your hands, I think, is important. So you can see here, the hands come together. I don't bring the sail, for these kind of cutbacks, I'm not bringing the sail so far across the body. So we saw it most in, I think it was this turn. You can really see it. And because I've got so much power, I'm pretty overpowered here. You can see I'm kind of almost a little bit out of control. But bringing that sail across really helps. I think my legs are too straight. There's a lot of I'm not crazy about with this turn, but anyway, the point is you can really see what I'm doing with the sail there, and that really helps when you're overpowered in onshore conditions. So it's like you come from the sail in front of you, like towards the nose in the bottom turn, right? Like I'm pushing the sail towards the nose of the board, forward and towards the nose. And then once I start coming up, I'm bringing the sail across my body towards the tail of the board. I get that bend in the arm, that S, right? You can see that there in the arm. And can you still see that, or is this too high? And so then you bring it up towards the tail. So you're pushing forward in the beginning with everything, and then you pull it back and across your body and get this S in your front arm. Now you asked about lay down in the bottom turn and whether you do that to kill speed. And actually I'm never trying to kill speed in any part of my wave riding. And when I'm laying the sail down, it's actually not to kill speed. It's more to just to transfer power from my sail, from my body to the rail of my board to get more carve, more power in the turn. So it's the proper lay down bottom turn is really different than a lay down jibe. So like with a lay down jibe, you're bringing the sail back, and with the bottom turn, you can see I'm pushing the sail forward. I'm really extending everything forward. And so it's really a feeling of all that power in the sail driving the rail of the board rather than just spilling off like you would in a lay down jibe, where then you've got the sail back towards the tail of the board. And so I'm really just thinking about pushing my arms forward and down and leaning my body forward. Yeah. Cool. All right, I'll check. I haven't really had a chance to read all of these comments. I'll go through that. All right. Moving down, Alex has a question, looking for a new wakeboard. Question about going custom or production. This is a really good question. There's some good answers here. I rarely break boards. My taboos I feel like are really strong. I feel like, yeah, they've got good outside shell construction, and so I don't really break them. I think it depends. There's so many factors. I think the local shapers can do a really good job with construction as well, and you can get some really strong boards, probably maybe stronger than the Cobra boards. I guess the X factor there is about shape. So I mean, that's a gift and a curse, right? So with a local shaper, you can get them to design a board specifically for you, which is really cool, because obviously the production boards are made slightly different, right? They're designed for still around specific people, right? There's this test team who are testing the boards and designing the boards, and they make boards that they like and they think other people will like. But that's based off of, right, their weight, their height, the sails they're using, the conditions they're in, whatever else. So a custom shaper can make you a board that's like just fit for you. But then that really puts a lot of trust or faith in that shaper. And the shapers that are designing the production boards, I think, really are the best shapers in the world. Whether it's Fabian Vollenweider at Taboo, or Keith Tabul at Quattro, or Werner with JP. These are some of the best shapers in the world, and so that their shapes are good. And that's then more of the X factor when you're dealing with more of a local shaper. And it can go the other way too. It can mean, there are some amazing local shapers out there, but it just, that's where your X factor is. So let us know how it goes. I want to hear what you choose and why. Steen has got some footage. Great day in Vikensee this week with nice sideshow conditions. His own coaching is to focus on turning the hips into the turn and lean more on the toe side and more weight to the front. Standard topics. Yeah, let's watch the video. I've already watched this video, of course, and I really like your flow. But Bjorn, Steen, both of these videos, I really like the flow that's going on with this riding. Right into the next turn. So it sounds like, Edwards, how's it going? So Steen, it sounds like you have a list of things in your head that you want to work on. I want to add just 2 more. I think you are doing a good job with your hips. I can see here, I can see it looks like you are pretty actively focusing on your hips. I mean, it's always good to focus more on that stuff, but it looks like you are doing a good job with your hips. But what I want to see you do is aim, instead of aiming for down here, I want to see you aim for these sections. You can hit this. Come up and hit this whitewater lip. So try to aim for sort of a shorter bottom turn and try to hit these sections. Hopefully this session is fresh enough in your head that you can kind of remember this moment and remember what this more or less looked like. I want you to be hitting these sections. So you come up to these sections, get that high five position, hit this section. That's one thing that I think a lot of people can do is doing a little bit more of a narrow bottom turn and really focusing on hitting the section. And to do that, you need to ride a little bit higher on the wave, so you're coming kind of a bit mid-face, but you can come up instead of coming below this lip and come actually at this lip and hit it. But the other thing that I want to see you work on is moving the hands. So you've got a little bit of hand movement, but I want to see more. I want to see a wider grip on the bottom turn, so you can grip all the way to where this black ends, and that will give you more control and more power. And same thing on this turn. Same thing. I want to see you hit this. So again, you're turning a little bit under the wave, and your timing is perfect. You could have come up and hit this lip, and you're good enough too. You've got a lot of confidence, a lot of speed, everything else. So instead of turning under the lip, I want to see you hit this lip. You can do it. And so the number one thing, but I like this flow. I like that turn. And going right into another turn is nice. There you come higher on the wave. I like to see that. So the number one thing I want to see you do is hit those sections. Instead of turning under them, I want to see you hit them. And the second thing is focus on getting more hand movement in the wave riding, and especially wider on the bottom turn. But looks good. This is an old question. We already talked about it. Ragnar, we talked about this. So Ragnar has an issue with boots and not finding footstrap covers that fit for how big he wants the footstrap to be. And there's some recommendations about witchcraft. I recommended the Decine outer straps. I wonder if I could make you something. Maybe not. But I wonder if there's something that I could get made in our factory that would fit a bigger strap. Maybe not. That might. I don't know if I'd be able to get the right dimensions for that. Anyway, Ragnar, I want to hear more about your journey, how it goes. I think this is a really interesting issue with the big boots, and how you deal with it for winter sailing. It's not a space where I'm an expert. I see people recommending the witchcraft straps, so give those a go, or the colored Decine straps. It's something that I find also a bit bigger. Maxime is asking about the lay down bottom turn. I've never heard anything on this subject before, so instinctively I've been trying to do it the same way as a lay down jibe, by tilting the mast slightly backwards, extending the back foot, keeping the body over the board, then laying the sail down while carving the board. However, I will lose a lot of speed. I'm not sure the same technique applies. So, good observation. So it's not about putting the sail back, like I said, where you're spilling the speed. It's about pushing the sail forward. So really pushing the sail forward and towards the nose of the board. And that helps really get the drive. And you're trying not to lose speed, but trying to transfer all the speed and power you have to the rail, getting that good rail engagement and going as fast as you can, because the more speed you have, the easier everything is. Speed is your friend. Speed is your friend. You want to go fast. Going slow doesn't really help with anything. Maybe it helps with some things. I don't know. But pretty much going fast is easier. You can get to more places because you've got more speed, so you have more control. It's easier to balance, right? So the faster you're going, the less things matter. Like, if we go back to my footage, like there's some kind of weird off the lips in here that looks super weird. But because I'm going, there's one in particular, let me find it. But because I'm going fast enough, it just doesn't matter. And so the faster you're going, like this is like kind of this like weird thing, but I've got enough speed that I can just control it. Which was the other one? There was another one from here. This one. Again, this is also weird. Like, look, my board comes out sideways, whatever. But it's because I have so much speed that I'm able to balance again. And if I was going slower, I wouldn't. So speed is your friend. You don't want to lose speed. So it's really about pushing forward. But the conditions need to be right for it. So doing a lay down bottom turn is less what you want to be doing when it's onshore. So you want more side shore, side offshore, down the line conditions. And then you can really lean into the turn. And so rather than thinking of like pulling the sail back or pushing the sail down, it's really a feeling of leaning into the turn and pushing the sail forward. All right, Tomas had a question about sailing in the Netherlands. How was your session? Best backloop practice ever. Nice. Cool. And this we already talked about last week. This one as well from Samuli. This is a cool post from Rory. There's not really a question attached to it. Just about working on his forward loops. And though it said one tip that changed it for him, that opened it up, was pointing way more downwind when he started the rotation. The more up into the wind you go, the more nasty the backslap if you crash, and less room you have to sheet in for the rotation. So I think this is good observation. I think for most people, especially when they're learning, you really want to go downwind on the forward loops. If you're going more upwind, you can get more whip, you can get more power, but then your technique really needs to be on point. You need to be really pulling in the sail really hard, because if you're just a little bit not sheeted in all the way, your rotation, that little mistake is going to be magnified. Whereas if you're going downwind, that's less the case. When you're taking up more upwind, it's a lot easier to go more end over end rather than horizontal. So you really have to have perfect technique if you're going to take off upwind and do a horizontal rotation. And as Rory points out, the more endo you go, the harder the backslap, and the harder it is to do a good rotation. But these look really good. The main takeaway is to take off really far downwind. So great job, Rory. We already talked about this from Edwin. I think we're all caught up. That sounds good. Yeah, that was a lot this morning, going from the workshop to the live coaching. It's windy today. I can see the trees moving outside. I'm going to sailing as much as possible. I'm trying to get some footage for the coaching as well. We haven't really had the conditions that are great for getting all the coaching content that I want, but it's been fun sailing. So I've been enjoying it, trying to work on my sailing. Pier Francesco about the spray. So spray is just displaced water, right? So the more water you displace, the more spray you will have. And spray does not always correlate with better turns. Sometimes you can have a really good turn that's not displacing a lot of water. So if you want to displace a lot of water, getting on the rail is important. And then getting the rail really in the water, dug in the water, and especially pushing against the water that's coming back up the face of the wave, right? Because you've got the water that's traveling up the face of the wave. And so as that water hits the rail that's sunk into the wave, that will create spray. Does that make sense, right? Spray is displaced water. So if you want more spray, figure out how to displace more water. Get that rail sunk in. Get it pointing against the water that's coming up the face of the wave. And that will help to generate more spray. Really sinking your butt back really helps too. It's something, back to my footage, just a little bit more my self-coaching. My legs are straighter than I want them to be, which I don't know why they are. But really like leaning your butt back, not that these turns have a ton of spray. One of these maybe. Yeah, really leaning your butt back. I mean, these don't have a ton of spray, but getting low in the knees. Oops. So like my legs are a bit too straight here. I'd like to see them more bent, but really like pushing that butt back. Yeah, these don't, none of these really have a ton of spray. This one maybe has a little bit more. But really see I'm kind of driving back, trying to get the board on the rail. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off. That was a great live stream. I'll see you again next week, Sunday. We might do another workshop as well on Sunday. Let me see. I'll post about it in the group. You've got to sign up beforehand, and then I'll send the Zoom invitation by email. But whatever we do, I'll post it in the Facebook group. For Cape Town, I'm still trying to plan that. There's a few things that complicate it about going there and doing some coaching. But I know that a lot of you guys are interested in coaching in Cape Town in either December or January. Again, if you haven't reached out and you are interested in that Cape Town coaching, reach out to me, send me a message, or just comment on this video and tell me that you're interested in the Cape Town coaching and when you're there. Because whether December or January, I think February is out of the question. It's more December or January. And let's see, I'm trying to make that happen. It's not confirmed yet though. And then I'll be in the south of France in November. So if you're around there, come say hi. And I'll see you guys next week, Sunday. I hope you have a lot of wind and a good week. I'll see you in the group and next week, Sunday. Hopefully you get on the water and have a good session. All right, everyone. Take care.